welcome everybody. And how many we got? One.
No, we're up to 5 so far.
5. Okay, 5. Awesome.
So welcome, guys. Thank you for coming. That's filled us full of cheer. Someone's just left.
That's a good start. All right, guys. So yeah, welcome to Australian Craft Distillers Shooting the Shit. This is something which started as a bit of a brain fart of an idea that moved rapidly to execution, which I do have a tendency to take brain fart ideas and run with them. Some good, some not so good. Anyway, so this one, yeah. And the idea behind it is there's a lot of Zoom, Facebook Live chats out there, and a lot of people are getting interviewed left, right, and center. And I thought to myself, and I talked to Todd and said, mate, we could do this ourselves. We could talk to Australian craft distillers and we could have a conversation distiller to distiller, which would be a different take. And so I took the idea and put it out to a few distiller mates. And within 24 hours, we had 24 distillers. So it was like, holy crap, maybe we do have something here. So we took that and it's gone beyond that. So now I've gone, well, let's talk to anyone who helps us put our stuff into a bottle. So I've got Coopers lined up. I've got maltsters lined up. I've got designers that we obviously work with design on bottles and that. I'm going to talk to water suppliers, going to talk to raw material suppliers, and we'll just see where it goes. Based on what I'm seeing so far, I think we've got enough content 2021, 2022. We'll see how we go 2023. It's just going pretty viral. One cool thing too is talk to a few Facebook distiller mates overseas, and they're dead keen to get on and shoot the shit with us as well, which is pretty exciting. I've got Waterford Distillery lined up, and there's a lot of people asking about Waterford, excited by Waterford in Ireland. I've got Alan Bishop from Spirit of the French Lick in the US. Really awesome guy, very creative, all about the craft, and one weird guy. He's got some great ideas. Then a couple of other US distillers and a couple of Scottish things happening. So the idea behind it is it also gives Australian craft distillers a bit of a voice, that we can tell you our stories, tell you what's going on behind our brands, the people behind it, and show you how we operate as a group. We're a very, very small group, Australian craft distillers. We tend to share information. This is what I believe anyway at this stage, and historically. We'll see what happens in the future. But we believe in the Bill Lark philosophy of a rising tide floats all ships. So we're better as a whole to work as opposed to tear each other down. I came from a competitive tear down industry, and I know Ed did as well. From OCD, and I know others as well. So we love the fact that our industry is not like that. We get to connect with the people that buy our product at a very personal level and share our experiences. So that's enough for me rabbiting on. This is an interview series. I'm not going to be doing all the talking. I want to sort of take a Graham Norton type approach on this, sort of step back. It's conversational and give people space to, say what they want to say. And hopefully we'll have a bit of fun on the way, which I'm sure we will. And we are going to tackle some tough questions as well over the series. So I want to tackle mental health. We're in COVID. It's been a difficult time. I want to cover pricing, Australian pricing of whiskies. I want to carry the stratification of the Australian industry. And this is not just whiskies. This is Australian craft spirits. So we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the gin revolution and the exciting things that are going on in Australia. So now we're going to have a chat with a very good friend of mine, a guy who likes to ring me up on a regular basis and just tell me, oh, just how many liters of alcohol I'm producing, and oh, how little alcohol I'm producing because I'm inefficient. He's a good friend. He is part of brother and sister combination of OCD, Otter Distilling, based in Sydney. He's a wannabe crafty mentor, and he's working his way to that. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Eduard, or Ed as I know him. Ed, mate, how are you?
Crafty, there we go. Virtual cheers, mate.
Mate, cheers.
Very well, mate. Very well. Very happy to be here too on this first auspicious occasion.
Yes.
This will turn into something much bigger than you had anticipated. But no, it's looking great. I think the response is fantastic. And I think the response starts to show that your beliefs in the Australian craft industry in terms of sharing information and wanting to spread the good word, as it were, is true. And that spirit is there, which is always good to see in an industry that is as young as ours.
Yeah, you're right. It's a very, very young industry. I mean, I look at it as there's waves of people that go through, the craft Australian industry, and it started with, the legendary Bill Lark, and then Casey Overeem, and then you had people like Cameron Symes who came through, and then there's the next wave, David Vitale and others, and so I think I'm in the fourth wave maybe, but I think we're up to about the seventh wave of people coming through in this industry. What do you think? What's your take on it all?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It is waves of people coming through, and I mean, it's developing into new and interesting ways people are doing things, and I think we're seeing that innovation come through. And we've got, where we've got, I guess that first wave, there was a lot of similarities in what they were doing, and obviously Bill's influence on those things were massive because, and thank God that in '92, Bill, for whatever reason, decided to make whiskey and start to change the laws and legislation that allows us all to do it today. But people are starting to challenge what the norm is, and in terms of how they do it and the type of stills they use and how they even ferment or, mix different flavors in and all that sort of thing, which is becoming really interesting. And, I like seeing posts where people are saying, I'm making this thing. They give a loose description of it, and it's like, what do I call it? Because it quite often is a new category. It's not whiskey or vodka or gin or rum or room. It's something else, and that's really cool. But at the same time, it's very challenging in terms of trying to get that into the market and educate people. Of course, I, like you, have a passion for whiskey, which is where it all sort of began, really.
Well, it's funny you say that. I started with whiskey, and whiskey is definitely where I'm at, and I was totally opposed to making any sort of white spirits. It was like, no, I don't drink white spirits, so why would I want to make a white spirit? But I, over the years, have developed an appreciation for white spirits, right? White spirits. I do particularly love Australian gins. I'm an avid gin lover now, to the point that I'm making gin now with some fantastic help from my gin mentors. Nick, g'day Nick. Ali, g'day Nick. Karoo Distillery, and if you haven't tried Karoo Distillery, you definitely need to. And that's exciting. If you put whiskey to one side and you just look at what's going on with gin, just the range of botanicals and the unique botanicals in Australia that gin distillers are using. If you take that and you take it across other white spirits, you're right. It's an exciting time. There's so many things that are going on, and in Australia, we don't have a huge amount of regulation and restriction controlling what we're doing. So it's a time for innovation. It's time for explosion and just create new shit, which is what you were just talking about.
No, definitely time to challenge the status quo, which is good.
Yeah. No, right, let's talk about back in the shed.
I'm under the garage.
Are you there now?
Back where it all began.
Back where it all began. So when I went to Ed's shed, I couldn't stand up straight, and because I whacked my head.
You are slightly taller than me, so.
I am slightly taller maybe. And Ed was distilling on a very, very small still. I remember seeing a couple of 100-litre barrels actually. And
Yep.
Ed you walk in and you go, it looked like a home distillery operation, a very, very good home distillery operation. However, it was a legal Australian, not illegal, a legal Australian distillery. So Ed, you were legal, you were making stuff, you were making stuff before others were making it in Sydney, and you were using some malts which others weren't using. So yeah, give us a bit of your backstory from the start, mate.
So yeah, so I got the idea of making whiskey probably just because I, a bit like you, got too excited one day about the brown liquid and started to have a look into what I guess what it would take to produce it in a top line scenario. I then started to get a little bit more technical and started to have a look at, you know, what do you really need to know if you're going to make this sort of product? You know, what is the background to it? Let's have a look at alcohol past being a consumer or a bartender, and not so much into a scientific look, but I guess it is a bit of a scientific look, and really understand what it's doing and how it operates. So I went out and read some very boring books, Book of Alcohol, and I then started to research what really happened in the distilling industry back way before. So before we sort of really knew about it. So I got into some really interesting history blogs and bits and pieces about it, and had a look at, you know, how did ferment used to work? What was it? You know, and I do love the stories of monks that would basically praise the ferment barrels because obviously God was converting their liquid into alcohol.
Yeah.
And sort of went through this process, and then came to the conclusion that it was definitely something I wanted to do. So I called up the ATO and asked the lovely people there, and they really were. The person I dealt with, she's since retired. Asked her what I would need to do, and she asked if I had a business plan. I asked about a format they wanted it in, and she said yes. And given my work history, so just to everyone understands, I've got a bit of a corporate background, it wasn't really hard for me to throw that together. So I was able to negotiate with them pretty quickly into terms of actually getting my garage bonded, which was great because that then meant I could do things properly. And the whole thing under the house was done really as a proof of concept in terms of this was to see, could I do it? And I wasn't coming from ground zero. You know, I'd made beer in the past, like proper beer, not beer out of a can, and made wine and things like that. So I had a good understanding of, you know, the cleaning and that sort of thing that was required to do it and how ferment worked, but not specifically to a single malt, which is really where my, I guess my love of whiskey is from. You know, single malt, single barrels, cask strength, all that sort of quite exotic stuff is what my passion was for. So I then went about having a look at, well, what am I going to use? So I sourced grains from who was available. And no offense to anyone who has it, but I got a whole lot of different ones in, and I tried and I was mashing. So under the house, I had a 180-litre pot. It's a great big stainless pot. And I had a big 4-burner burner underneath, very Euro style, as it were, boiling water. And obviously we had some lessons early on about cooling wort and things like that and filtering it. And the local fabricators became good friends as I got different bits and pieces made to make this journey a little bit better. And then I started to realize that, you know, really getting this mash down at the start was probably one of the biggest challenges I was going to have. So I spent quite a lot of time, well over 18 months, really just working on different mashes, learning how to grist properly, you know, how big it had to be. And then once I had that, started playing with different yeasts to see, you know, the impact they would have on the flavour and what that looked like and how long I was going to ferment for, what temperature I was going to ferment for. And was I going to be like beer and, you know, hold a low temperature, or was I going to be like the some of the crazy people out there who just let it go into the ambient, which is what I ended up doing. And then I started putting it through the still. And, you know, again, when you're running it through the still, you're looking at different configurations. And those of you who are lucky enough to come out to the distillery, you can actually see the still that I used, and I can show you, well, it's quite easy to see how I could change the configuration of the still to give me different outputs, whether height, pressure, temperature, all that sort of good stuff.
Yeah.
So I started playing with that, but as much as it was coming out, and I was getting alcohol, which is always a humongous thrill when you go through all this effort, because when you're hand mashing, as Crafty would probably be aware, from gristing to boiling water to cooling that down as much as you can to pitching to it finally fermenting to getting into the still, it's a long process, and it takes a long time and a lot of hours that people don't really appreciate. And it comes out of the still, so you get alcohol, and it's like, oh, this is fantastic. But it never really tasted right to me. Now, I had other people who were trying it, and they were telling me, no, it's good, it's good. But for me, there was something missing. And if I was going to do it, I wanted to do it properly, because there was so much effort going in. It was like, well, it's not worth this unless it's really going to be something I'm particularly happy. So I then started to look at where to get grain from, and I started calling around, thinking, well, surely I can just buy grain from a farm. Somewhat harder than one would think, actually. And then I called up the country areas, and I think I got through to some women's association out in the country who put me through to Stu and Brad. Now, Stu and Brad own Voyager Malts, and I've had a really long-standing relationship with them. It's been absolutely fantastic. So I'm under the house. I don't know if you can imagine my house. It's 25 metres from my driveway to my garage door. We have quite a large front yard. Stu, I gave Stu the specs of what I wanted in a malt, in a barley. And he said, well, we've got one, we can try it. He said, but you need to buy a ton. So 40, 25 kilo bags. And I was like, well, why not? Right, let's give it a crack. So on a hot summer's day, it got delivered. I was about to go to work in a suit, and the truck dropped it on the road. So after a hard hour's slog, back in the shower, new suit, and off to work, I came home and started to play with this new grain, this new Latrobe, and it was amazing. Straight away, I could tell when it was gristing, the sweet smell of it going into the mash. It was different. It smelt different. It tasted different. It was smoother. The conversion was better. And admittedly, I had spent a lot of time already, so I was getting better at doing it. And then into the still it went. I then had the fortunate accident, as it were, of someone who used to work for me. I was talking to him, and he actually used to work for Grain Australia. And he started to then teach me about graining and grain size and what that all meant, which was gave me a whole lot of questions to go back to Stu with. So what I started to find out was that it's not just the quality of the grain, but it's also then the sizing of the grain and what happens to it starts to affect it, because when you're malting it, so I'm assuming we've got mainly whiskey people on, so most people know what malting is, but for those who don't, you take a grain, wheat, rye, barley, doesn't matter, and after it's been harvested, it gets dried, it then gets laid out and it gets wetted. And when it's wet, it starts to germinate. And this is always the classic picture you see in Scotland, a guy walking with the rake behind him. So essentially what's happening is the grain thinks it's in the ground and it's starting to sprout. Midway through that process, they stop it by drying it, knock the tails off it, and we now have malt. So we've changed what's inside it. So the stuff inside is a little bit different, which means that when you go through the mashing process, it is slightly different as well. So if you're using wheat or unmalted versus malted, obviously there's some different things you need to do. So this really started to show me how good this product was that I had, that Stu and Brad were really specific around the sizing of the grain that they were using, which meant that when they were malting it, they were doing a really, really good job in providing this great product. So a little bit of a John West situation, it's what you reject makes it the best. And this got me on to really looking at what was Australian in terms of what we get into our product. And it hadn't really formed, I guess, the entire basis of it, because we are violently Australian in terms of where we source our materials from. Admittedly, there's always things that we can't get in Australia, but where we can, we definitely will. And it took us down this path. So long story, we started to develop the product, and for 3 or 4 years under the house, we were making the new make. And then we got on to actually barreling it. So we had the new make at a point where it was ready to go in a barrel, and I thought it was good, but I wasn't 100% sure, because the problem is when you read your own writing, it's hard to see your own mistakes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
agree.
Yeah,
With that,
sorry?
I said other distillers will agree with that. It's, you know, it doesn't matter what you learn, what you're taught, you will make your own mistakes. And it's actually, you and I have talked about it, it's an important part of the process to own your own mistakes and learn from your mistakes. So just on what you were talking about briefly about alcohol yield. So currently I'm around about 7.5% beer wash. That's what I make, and pretty happy with that. But I remember my 3 years and going, come on, what's going on?
Come up
and,
about 7%.
You know what it's like, you know, the whole whiskey process. If you start with a shit beer, low ABV beer, it just filters through the whole process to your yields are shocking, and you're not filling your barrels as you need to fill them. So slight question, but just for those that don't understand that we chase ABV, but we also chase flavour, and sometimes you do trade off the ABV to flavour. That's another aspect of it too, isn't it?
Yeah, no, look, it is. We run our mashes at 9.5% ABV.
Here we go, 9.5. Let's go on. Yeah, come on, keep going.
We are it's very consistent. But part of that is repeatability. So, you know, we are a commercial product, and we do vodka as well as whiskey, and it all comes from the same stuff. So it's single malt vodka, single malt whiskey.
That's quite unique. That's very unique what you're doing there with your vodka off malted barley, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. A little bit different. So, and it's important that from a flavour perspective, it is consistent from the start. So the mash is the same, the ABV is the same, the ester development, all that sort of stuff is the same. And then when it goes to the distill, there's repeatability. So the cuts remain the same. It really has to be the way. So, as I was saying, we had the new make almost ready to rock and roll. I thought anyway, but I wasn't 100% sure. And I had a mutual friend of ours over for dinner, Reg.
So, hey guys.
Yeah.
So just one question's come in from the panel outside.
Yeah.
How many lows is that you guys are talking about?
How many lows per ton?
Or how many lows is what you're producing?
Oh, at the moment.
At the moment, 9%.
At the moment, the current iteration, we do about 100 litre barrel at 70% ABV a week, plus about 100 bottles of vodka at 44%, 700 ml. That's our current production. It's what we're currently sitting at.
About 2,000 lows for me.
Lows per ton. I need a calculator. I can never remember.
1,000 ton. I hate that.
Sorry.
I'm doing loud. I feel I'm targeting 3,000 litres a year, which is nothing, I know, at caskable. So I'm casking about 64-ish. So anyway, carry on, Ed. Sorry.
So Reggie came over. We had a really good night that night because we drank one of his bottles of aged moonshine. But he tasted it and gave me that reassurance that the flavour profile was 100% bang on and stick it in a barrel and don't change what I was doing, which was good. Yep. So we then had a really good basis and repeat. And then really from there, it was about how can I process over and over again to make sure I got it right. But we had to be able to see, could we do it larger? Because I was mashing in a 180 litre container. So by the time you put the grain and everything in and you're really going, you're actually getting out about 80 litres of wash. And it's not a huge amount, especially with the time it takes. So for me to do an 80 litre wash, to get into ferment, to get into the still was probably taking me about 12 hours. So in terms of time and output, it wasn't working very well. So we knocked on the door of our good friends at Dad and Dave, which is a brewery over in Manly, and we engaged them to use their equipment to make a 1,000 litre wash, which was absolutely brilliant. And Dave was extremely patient.
Hold on. Does that mean you went from a brewer to a beer boiler. Would you like to comment on that, or?
The beer is something in particular, and I get where you're going with this, and I feel it's a personal attack on me.
It's actually if Marty Pie was interesting. I'm waiting for him to follow.
Look, I'm drinking the grumpy old man stuff, for God's sake. I mean, he should be happy.
And he's not even here.
Here, Riverbourne, this is what we're drinking tonight.
Yeah.
So I just put it out.
Just hang on.
No, well, I mean, I made it with him, so I don't really consider myself a beer boiler. There are levels, though, and it's not.
We'll talk about that later on. But hang on, let's just pause for a sec and just say what everyone's drinking, because the idea of tonight is everyone's got to be drinking an Australian craft spirit. Doesn't have to be whiskey, just the craft spirit. So starting with Todd in the corner, what are you drinking, mate?
Corowa.
And what is it?
It is their single malt cask type French port, slightly peated.
Oh, yes, I've tasted that. That's pretty awesome. What about you, Luke? What are you on, mate? Local nerd?
I've just finished my bottle of Lark, Symphony number 1.
All right. Yeah.
Which is, now, there's a dribble. Fantastic.
And what's on? What are you having after that? It's a long night.
It's a very long night. I don't know. It depends on how many times you drop the camera as to whether I need something else stronger.
It's very professional right now. I'm very impressed with things again. Ed, what are you drinking, mate?
So I'll do this again just because it was here. I would normally be drinking this, but
get that
Get
off.
that out of there. That's not.
Crafty said I couldn't drink my own.
That's a plug.
So I was gonna drink this, but then Crafty said no.
That's a plug as well. Pull him.
He said no. You have to drink something good. So I'm drinking this.
Nice.
Terrible. I know.
That's it's actually it's probably the most expensive Australian whiskey I've bought. This is a stout cask, Bakery Hill. Really interesting, really enjoying it. And
very good stuff, that one.
Yeah, we'll be drinking it. Todd comes back to the shed, we'll probably polish that off.
Yeah, unless you drink it all tonight.
No, I can't. I'm actually working. The still's running right now.
Oh, okay, good. Hey, Paul, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question so you get it right?
We got a question, have we? Have we got a viewer?
Yes. We do have a viewer.
Hey, Crafty. Shandy here.
Who is it? Sorry?
Shandy. Can you hear me?
How are you?
I'm good. Yeah. My question was about the lals per ton. Looking at your yields, the lals per ton is the only way to tell you how much alcohol you're getting from the barley. The ABV depends really on the amount of water you're adding. You add more water, you get a lower ABV effectively. So how many lals per ton do you guys get?
Mate, you are asking a really technical question, and seriously, I don't know. I'm still, how can I put it? My yields in the last 6 months have improved dramatically. Just a few tweaks in the way that I'm doing things. So I haven't actually sat down and done a calculation, but when I do, Shandy, I'll let you know, mate, definitely.
Okay.
But I'm improving, but I am using base malts. So I'm using specialty malts, so it is lower yielding for sure. But it's punching some big flavors as well.
Yeah, I mean, I basically say I use, for each run I do, I use 400 kilos of barley.
Yeah.
And when I do my wash run, I just work out how many lals I get, and then use that lals, and then work out how much barley I'd use to get lals per ton. So it's very simple calculation to do.
On a wash run, I'm doing about 60 lals now.
Okay.
That's for a 900 litre wash run.
Yeah.
So I'm way better than what I used to be.
Fantastic.
But I'm not up to Ed's standards. What was your ABV on your beer again, Ed?
We run out. No, we're 9.5 is what it's beer. It's wash. You're
just so good. So good.
Terrible.
All right. Have we got any questions there, Todd?
No, that's the only one so far. So
All right.
keep
Let's-
going. Crack
And
on.
we've got a few viewers.
Apparently someone's drinking beer though, which is a bit sort of disappointing.
Put them out. Put them out. Cut them out. Cut them out.
Beer drinkers, not allowed. Oh, maybe it's an Australian beer. We'll let it go. That's right. So, yeah.
So
we
carry on and where you went from the shed to where you are now, which is very, very different operation.
Yeah. So we amongst all this, I was sort of working on the still in terms of what would be larger, and really working on a redundancy plan in terms of making sure that the still I was using here wasn't going to go to waste, that I could then use it again in the iteration. So the next still, which is a 400 litre still in capacity, was designed around the output partly that I was going to get that allowed me to continue using the 70 litre still with the 6-plate column on it. This, to me, is kind of important because I don't like to waste equipment. I want stuff to be used and reused, and I know in some cases it sort of turns into research stuff and all that, which is great. But we weren't really at that size, or we weren't going to be at that size to do that. So for me, it was really about making sure that I could use it in the next size. It was also then about designing a still that was bigger, obviously 400 litre capacity, but it was going to still do the same flavour profile I was getting out of this 70 litre still in its various iterations. And that's really important. And it comes down to that consistency again, that, I've made this product in the garage, and, people had come and tried it, people like yourself and some other whiskey people, and other people had tried the new make and given really good feedback. But that was also going to go to waste if, you change it up and all of a sudden it doesn't work. Yeah. So the first point was that I needed to be able to make the wash bigger. So we did that. So we were able to transform this 80 litre at a go wash up to this 1,000 litres at a go.
Right.
And we were able to put that through the 70 litres still and get the same result, which was great. And it was very exciting when I got my first 1,000 litres of wash. It was huge, right? And far easier to do than the 80 litres at a time. The only problem I had was that I then needed to get that 1,000 litres through this 70 litres still, which clearly took ages to do. So there was some long nights and lots of doubling up. The other problem with the smaller still was it's a direct immersion, and I was getting a lot of burning onto the actual element. So I spent a lot of time cleaning the still out. Thankfully, the pot of the still is 314 stainless, which meant that it wasn't that hard to clean. I could be pretty brutal in cleaning it, but the tower being full copper was fine. It wasn't really copping it. It was okay. So we went to the path though. Spent quite a lot of time designing the new still, learning a lot about pressures in stills and vapor and how fast it comes up and all that sort of stuff. And then also looking at things like, what's the line arm made out of? Is it going to be copper or is it going to be stainless, and the impact that has on it. And then different cooling systems. We run with shotgun condensers versus worm tubs, and what that does. So a lot of time spent looking at all that sort of good stuff. But led us down the path basically to have a 400 litre still that has an 8-inch choke point on it. Then it opens up into an onion that's about half a metre across, and into a 2-inch 314 stainless steel line arm into a shotgun condenser that's all stainless steel. And based on the sums and the conversations with various people, it meant that this should replicate the same flavour profile as what I was doing before. So it was quite exciting the day we eventually got it hooked up and able to get some wash in there to see what it was going to do, and had a slight moment of almost getting religious, and it did, which was really, really good. So based on the same formulation in the cut. So one of the things we do too, which is a little bit different to others or some, I'm not sure what everyone's doing, but we actually cut the head. So we take a head cut. Obviously, we calculate the methanol content based on the ABV that it comes through, and then we take a cut. But being that we're distilling in a natural environment, we're not distilling in a vacuum or a temperature control, your first lot that comes out isn't the highest ABV. so obviously some other stuff's coming out with it as well, and it's not a perfect cut.
Right.
I've got to say, early on, I was super paranoid about methanol. It was to me quite a scary sort of a thing, and I didn't like it. So I was going to do whatever I needed to do to make it go away. The other thing I was brutally aware of is, we're in Australia. We're not going to age whiskey really for the 40 years that they are going to do it overseas. It's going to be a lot shorter. And starting in 50-litre barrels, that ended up being 30 months is what we find is the magic number for us. And you'll see it on most of our 50-litre barrel whiskies, which we put the age statement on every bottle. We put to the month just because it's readable. We work it out to the day, but that's just a stat that we keep on our spreadsheet. So knowing this, we wanted to make sure it was. So not only do we take a head cut on the first run, we take a head cut on the second run as well before we actually make our new make. And we don't play with it. We don't add water. We don't bring it back down. It comes out what it is. And it comes out usually between 69 and 71% ABV, weather depending. So some
barrels, just slow you down there for a second. So you're going into barrels at what, about 69, 70%?
Yeah, 69, 70%. So
it's a very high, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people, including myself, are going in around about 63 to 65 for no other reason than it's really the Scottish way and haven't really played around with it. But I know that there's people going up in 70 and there's people going down in the 50s and filling barrels. So it's really interesting. So what's your take on why you go in at a high ABV besides barrel efficiency? What's the other reason for it?
Well, I heard what you were doing, so I thought I should do something different. No. Daryl. Yeah. No. So what my research showed me was that we were obviously going to get a faster maturation, or supposedly a faster maturation in Australia. Yep. So the reasons for that sort of sit behind the fact we have high fluctuations of temperature during the day. Obviously, the timber responds to that. We also have some variances in terms of high pressure system, low pressure system. It's going up and down all the time. So this is going to speed it up. By increasing the alcohol content, essentially what we're trying to do is we're balancing it out and we're slowing it down. So for the most part, it's kind of the water that does the work in terms of pulling the sugars and the good stuff out of the barrel and the colour, and the alcohol tends to suspend it. So what we found is that it works as a really good balance in giving the result that we're looking for in the time frame that we want. I mean, the challenge with oak is that we want to age the whiskey in oak, but we don't want the whiskey to taste like oak. As soon as it starts to taste like oak, it's quite off-putting, like Chardonnay from the early 90s, which I don't understand why we ever drank them, because they're not very pleasant. So it is that balance, and I find it gives us that. I mean, if we could leave it in there for longer, we would, but the reality is that we really find that where we are over that time, we've extracted what feels like the maximum flavour profile from it, without it tipping into tasting like an oak barrel. And a lot of the barrels have come out like that. And interestingly, even the new French oak barrel, which was only lightly toasted, which really came from a concept of looking at how did whiskey used to be before we did all these wonderful things to it, before we charred them and all that sort of stuff. And, me thinking of me dressed in oldie clothing, going into a corner store with a flagon, to fill up the thing from the barrel. Really, what would that taste like? So we found a really good cooperage in France, Damy, and we were able to get one of their barrels as a trial, and it was great. It worked really, really well. And I think the other thing that worked well from it was that because we were taking the head cuts and we were removing those volatiles early on, we weren't looking for the barrel to do that. So because the barrel wasn't doing it, we'd already done it. We still ended up with a really smooth tasting product. I mean, the color of the new French oak was actually darker than the color of the charred bourbon barrel that we did, which was sort of a bit bizarre. It didn't really make sense that a barrel that had been charred was going to be lighter than one that was, you know, fresh off the rack, as it were.
Yeah.
A really great learning in the flavour, and subsequently we've put down more new French oak barrels that are lightly toasted because that's really good.
Hang on a sec. Yeah. We got a couple of questions come in, have we, or comments?
Yeah, something about the ABV going up and down.
Yeah, what was that, mate?
Hang on.
Yeah,
we've got a few kicking in here.
All right, let's hit us with some questions then.
Okay, so how do you track your stock being aged?
Yeah, Ed, you mentioned you've got a spreadsheet. I was just wondering, how complex is that spreadsheet, and what are you tracking?
What are we looking at with it?
Yeah,
I'll say that's to you, Ed.
When you're keeping records to the day.
Oh yeah. So what we're looking at is what any changes are within the barrel in terms of what the losses are. Obviously, you're measuring it on weight, and then what's happening with the ABV. So in terms of ABV, we find that there isn't a great variance in terms of the entry and the exit. It tends to be about the same. It doesn't fluctuate much, and I think any fluctuation that's in there is almost explainable, you know, from what's been absorbed or something like that. It's not a great deal. We are looking at the losses in terms of it. I mean, you do lose, and obviously when you have hotter, colder, warmer days, then clearly it's going to speed that up, and you're going to lose more product from the barrel, which is sad. It's terrible, actually, but it's the nature of the beast. But we find that doesn't. So really what we're looking to track is what the changes we can record are. And they're pretty consistent. So the first 6 barrels that we've released, and I did see someone ask a question before about whether you can buy it. You can have a look at the bottle shops we sell at. We've sold out. Some of them still have some bits and pieces floating around, but there's not a great deal out there. So we found over the 6 barrels that there is a high level of consistency in terms of what's happened, which again is really good because it shows us that what we're doing is consistently producing a product that's giving us the same end result. So it becomes quite a reliable outcome, which I think is really important for us and for the consumers, because they want to know that they're getting something that is always similar. I mean, ultimately for us, because we are a true single malt in that we literally use one malt, which is Latrobe, and because we do use single barrel, you know, what needs to be the variance in the flavour is the barrel, and it's what makes it interesting. So when
do you have a single spreadsheet with like barrel 1?
Yeah.
Test 1, test 2, test 3 with the results in there, or like how detailed are you getting with? Because there's no way you could remember all of those barrels.
Oh, yeah. No, it's on a spreadsheet. So I just to note at this point in time, I am the opposite.
I like data. That's why
I wish I had data.
I am the opposite of Crafty in that when I put a bung in a barrel, it's there for good. So typically, if I'm putting a 50-litre barrel down, I will check it at the 2-year mark, at the 24 months mark, knowing that it's going to be about 30 months. And that's just to really check that it is going on the right path and nothing deceivious has happened that I need to be aware of. When we're talking about a 100-litre barrel, our 100-litre barrels will be down for about 3.5 years, and we will check them at the 3-year mark to make sure we're headed in the right path. Prior to that, we will not open the barrel. There is a 200-litre ex-rum barrel from Trinidad and Tobago there. That will be checked at the 5-year mark. And there is a 350-litre ex-cognac barrel that has not been recoopered, not been recharred, and that will be checked at the 7-year mark.
Ed, I reckon you've got big ones of these balls, because to go that long and not check a barrel, I work on the basis of 1 year, and that's quite hard sometimes, isn't it, Todd? But
oh yeah,
we try and go at least 1 year, because after 1 year, you got a good indication which way the barrel's going. But for you to leave it so long,
That's probably why your yields are so low, Crafty.
So just raising that then.
yeah,
To both of you, how do you think climate affects your yields?
massively.
Yeah, massively. So I mean, if you've got you've got 2 parts. One, you've got a temperature fluctuation throughout a day. So from cold to hot, hot to cold, the timber itself, the pores in the timber will open and close. And I mean, you know, anyone who's got a wooden door at the front of their house will understand how humidity will make it swell up and shrink back again, and the door will jam. It's no different to a barrel. I mean, barrels are, you know, they're a natural product. The other part is you've got variances in the actual pressure that's in the atmosphere. So high pressure days, low pressure days. Obviously, in a high pressure day, the barrel will fill with pressure because it will seek to equalize with what's around it. And then the next day, if it's low pressure, then obviously what's inside is then going to seek to equalize, going to push out through the barrel. And you tend to see this in the barrels where you see a weeping coming through. You see these beautiful caramelized sugars coming through the staves, and they smell fantastic and do really, you know, it's like the hint of what's coming for the products. I mean, it's fantastic. So that sort of all works into it.
So do you take a sneaky lick of that? You like run your finger underneath the barrel and
Jam. It's called jam, whiskey jam.
It's fantastic. You can't not do that. That's the joys of being the distiller, of being able to get in and do it. So that definitely has an impact. I mean, if you compare it to, you know, distilleries that are in areas that are just cold all the time, clearly they're not going to have these pressures on it. And the other part too is we're running smaller barrels. So, you know, we obviously have some larger barrels, but for the most part, it's 50s and the majority are 100s. So when you look at the ratio of liquid to timber, it's a lot higher in a smaller barrel. So therefore, the impact that what's happening on the timber is going to have more impact that's on the liquid as a percentage. So that's where you're going to get more losses due to atmosphere, due to where you are, and due to the size of the barrel that you're using. The flip side to that is I don't know that, you know, running 500 or 600 litre barrels would work that well in Sydney. I mean, someone could prove me wrong, I'm sure, but, you know, when you sort of look at it, that would be an incredibly light timber, a lot of surface area, having a lot of pressure put on it from these changes that are constantly happening. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see. But, yeah.
Ed, I think you're right about, you know, your climate definitely has a huge impact. I'm at, I think about 850 meters above sea level, and we got the Central Plains. And so we get a lot of storm fronts that blow off the Central Plains, and that changes your pressure. You know, your low pressure systems come through, that changes the pressure in the barrel. And you actually do see the barrels stress and strain with what's going on.
Oh, definitely.
I'd say is right now in the last, I don't know, probably last 4
He's
weeks.
got the shits and walked out now.
Oh, he's given up. He's given up. Elvis has left the building.
I had a technical problem. I just had to fix it. But thank you for highlighting.
Well, I got a still running, which I think is still running. Yeah, so
I hope you're not doing anything important.
The last 6 months, not 6 months, the last couple of weeks, I've noticed some variation in barrels. Certain barrels are starting to show some signs of weepage, where during winter, nothing. They were tight as, and now, you know, I've got a bourbon barrel. It's a Jack Daniel's 150-year anniversary barrel. It's into year 2. No sign of weepage at all, and now it's just starting to show some weepage. So I'm thinking through summer it's going to be a bit of a challenge, that one. So yeah, you do see absolutely climate makes an impact for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
But let's change the subject completely.
All right. There's another question then.
Well, let's do the question first. Then go.
Okay. Do you find that ABV increases or decreases over the aging period?
For us, we see very little variation.
Very little.
Yeah, very little.
I go up fractionally and go down, yeah, I pretty well level off just below where I put in generally. If you talk to Blackgate, talk to Brian Hollingworth 2.5 hours down the road, you get a different picture altogether. So again, it's all related to your location and where you're at for sure.
Okay. And what are you finding? And what are you finding your angel share is?
Yeah. What are you, Ed?
More than I want it to be.
Yeah.
Oh,
The Scots get pissed off after 1.5%. I think the last time I looked at it was about 7% on a barrel.
Typically 5 to 7% a year.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Which isn't look, I mean, that's not a bad number, really, and it's not unexpected. When you research and you have a look at, what people experienced in the past and what it looks like, I think, to be honest, we're probably, I thought it would be higher, given the variations and the size of the barrel. I'd expect that the smaller barrels get a larger loss as opposed to the volume, and the bigger barrels tend to have a little bit less. In saying that, we're not playing with any of the barrels the size that the Scots are. We're really those 50s and 100s, and just having the occasional. I mean, to be honest, the 200 litre rum barrel was just that we got it into Recooper. Just fell in love with the bloody thing and thought it was quite amazing. It just felt wrong not to at least fill one of them. It's five brothers all got converted into 100 litres, and someone offered me or showed me that I could have a 350 litre cognac barrel. So I got that and 114 litre brother of it that has been recoopered. But I mean, they're like little passion projects within the distillery that I just got a bit excited about. Having this really cool barrel, and when you see it, you see a 350 litre ex cognac barrel. I mean, they're a piece of art. They're made amazingly well. They're absolutely gorgeous. So, I didn't want to let that go. I don't know how many we'll do with that size, but we'll see how we go.
So let's talk about the other side of OCD, a completely different side of OCD. So talk about your sister.
Julie. Yeah, so Julie's my business partner. Her background is in corporate fashion and beauty. So she's been CEO of fashion and beauty, so MAC Cosmetics, Peter Alexander, all that sort of side of the business. So she very much brings that marketing side to it, and those sort of connections, which is a slightly different way of thinking from the standard liquor, I guess, background, which is good. We loosely describe it as I'm inside the bottle, she's outside the bottle. Which works quite well. And there needs to be some sort of split in terms of the role in the business. I mean, I don't, but I would do particularly well with someone telling me how to distill. So it's probably a better way of doing it. But it works quite well. It's good. It's good. So we'll grow the business with that.
Take it back to the beginning then. So you're a brand new distillery. You've got some product. You think it's good. You know it's good because you've had people who know their whiskies and not just whiskies, because you do other spirits as well. How did you get it out there? How did you convince people to try it, number one, and number two, pay the price that you needed to continue doing what you needed to do?
So we did, obviously I've got a background in liquor, so we didn't come into the business blind in terms of what it is, and Julie had connections as well. So when we did the first barrel, and we did the first lot of vodkas, we went into on-premise. So the goal of the business was to gain some level of understanding from the on-premise side of the business, which really would then sell it for you, because you've then got some relevance into the non-on-premise side of the business. We were very fortunate in that we were able to use our contacts to get to see people. So Gasoline Pony up in Marrickville was actually with the first place to stock our product.
Fiona?
Fiona loves locals,
Yeah.
which was brilliant. And it was absolutely lovely to have someone who wasn't necessarily a venue that we would look at in terms of the pricing of our product, but just saw the passion that was happening in the distillery, has an appreciation for fine liquor, and was super keen to get it behind the bar. And I'm pretty sure half of what she bought was for her bar at home and half was for the actual bar. It was great. So she was the first one. The next day after that, we actually met with Tucker in Key. So he looks after the bar for Key and Bennelong, 2 restaurants, obviously, in Sydney. And Tucker has a very good knowledge of whiskey and a love of Japanese whiskey. He really loves his Japanese whiskey, which was brilliant. We went there, we got a meeting, we sat down, and I had a sales pitch ready to go, quite long and extensive, because he was going to buy it before I left, as far as I was concerned. I poured the whiskey, he tried it, and he said, "All right, I'll take it." And I sat there and went, "Yeah, but I've got a whole speech, so you need to hear it whether or not you want to."
Whether you want to or not.
so that went particularly well, and we really found that this was a story that happened again and again as we went to different venues. Was it really based on the quality of the product, the way it presents, and the story we were able to give them about it? They were on board with doing it. We then offered to take the teams into the distillery and show them how we make the product. So one of the advantages of being where we are and being the size we are is that it's easy to come in and you can smell, touch, taste everything. You can taste what wash actually tastes like, what it is, and depending on the day, you might actually taste it mid-ferment while it's still bubbling, which is really cool. It's beautiful to drink. You can taste what low vines taste like. You can smell the head cuts, and then you can actually taste the new make before it goes into a barrel. Partly novelty because the ABV is so high and it's all a bit of whatever, but also create an understanding that you can actually have this product that has an ABV that is quite high, but at the same time is quite drinkable and surprisingly smooth. And a lot of the time it sort of opens our eyes up to what distilling really is and how it works. And that overlaid with the story of how we make it and our suppliers and all that really good stuff that we do, sort of got it in there. So I think the quality and what it is sort of overcame price. And I mean, look, we didn't bring out, we never aimed to bring out a product that was, in the mid-tier market. We were always aiming for a premium product. It's what we wanted to do because that's where we want to be, and that's what we want to represent. And we want to represent, where the story went. We really want to represent, Australian produce, and specifically produce from the Riverina. And I think it's produce. So, trying to make it cheaper wasn't really the option. It was really about, we're going to make it to taste, and it's going to cost what it's going to cost. And that's where the pricing lies. And I think it's a formula that works. And it's a formula with all our products. So again, the vodka is a single malt product. We do a coffee vodka, and we get the coffee from Morgan's Coffee. And we do a cacao vodka, which we get the cacao from Zakoko Chocolate. So Dean and Michelle own Morgan's Coffee and Zakoko Chocolate. They're in Emu Heights, because apparently it sounds better than Emu Plains. They're a lovely couple, and they are very much about sourcing ethically. So they go to, all these crazy places where coffee and cacao is grown. And they make sure that the people who are growing it are doing it properly, they're doing it ethically, they're doing it sustainably, and they actually pay fair price. They're not trying to rip people off. They're making sure that they do it. And, Dean goes to some places for coffee where the entire load might only be a ton. That's their whole crop. So every gram of it becomes, uniquely important when you only have this small amount of coffee that you're then going to bring back into Australia. But to secure that, obviously, he has to make sure he's paying the right price, because otherwise I'm not going to sell it to him. So, aligning ourselves with people like that really comes through the product. So if you taste the coffee or the cacao vodka, we're a real coffee hit and we're a real chocolate hit. And we're not so much your Cadbury's dairy milk chocolate, but more your 85 cacao chocolate bar. And that quality comes through the product. I mean, yes, there are cheaper ways of getting coffee and there are cheaper ways of putting, the chocolate into liquor. But what we wanted to do was to have a vodka, not a liqueur, so as to allow people to actually play with it and make it as sweet or not as they wanted to. But that meant that the products going in had to be of this quality because the flavour is so present. It's not hidden with anything. There's no, it's not like it's a brandy that's then been flavoured with something. So there's not this odd sweet backing or anything like that. It's very much up front. And then that led us into doing the 2 botanicals, Lemon Drop and 23, where we use Anthea teas. Sorry?
No, it wasn't me. Carry on.
You just glitched a little bit there.
You got a Todd.
No, don't know.
Todd, are you there?
Might be me.
I thought we had a question. No?
Okay.
No questions.
No question. Oh, it was just a cough. Okay, carry on.
So, so we did the 2 botanical vodkas. We used Anthea's tea. So Anthea's a naturopath and a tea maker in Paddington. She met Julie at a party. They hit it off really well, so they're really good friends. And again, we sort of got into it. And Anthea's sourcing techniques are similar to ours in that she's about paying fair price. She's very much about sourcing Australian product where possible first. So, with the exception of 23 that has juniper in it, it's still technically not a gin. Obviously the juniper's not from Australia, but the other products in it are from Australia and they have been sourced ethically and make sure that fair price is paid. And it's sort of become quite a part of the business. And I guess, the question is, how do you sell it in based on the price? Once people start to understand what goes into it and the fact that the business is actively supporting Australian agriculture with what we're doing, and that's with the malt through Stu and Brad, that, we're paying in such a way that we're making sure that the farmers can actually look after the land and grow the land, and grow the crop in the best possible way. It really does ring true with them. And I mean, especially if it's a restaurant, where they're trying to buy produce for themselves and they're trying to understand that, they can relate to that. And, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to have a look at what happens to the price of grain to sort of scratch your head and think to be a farmer must be absolutely horrendous because, you can go from, $600 a tonne to $100 a tonne. I mean, but your land doesn't magically make more grain. But how hard you work, it definitely does change. So, for us, making sure people are getting what they should means that they can actually farm in a way that is ethical, and that means they're not going to absolutely rape the land, which ultimately means that we will always get back a better product, which means we can produce a better product. So there is a real cycle in terms of the economics of it, and for us, it's important.
Yeah, there are other distillers that talk about the land and the farmers and the connection and how important it is to us. And the more you get into brewing, distilling, you just understand how it's so linked and how important it is. And so those relationships are absolutely essential if that's the way you're going with your business. If you're trying to produce, in my own opinion, you're trying to produce a craft product, you need to know where everything's coming from to make that craft product and have a connection with all parts of it. It's part of the story, and you know what it's like, mate. Everyone now wants to know more and more about what is in the bottle, and the more you can pick up a bottle and go, okay, I made this and I use this grain and this was my mash bill and these were my temperatures and these were my barrels. People love that, and it's an absolute point of differentiation against the big end of town. You can pick up a bottle of whiskey and go, I see the label and I can get on the website, but I can't do much more than that. So I really think that's a strength for us in the small end of town in Australia, you know, and that's the idea. Part of this series is to get it out there and get people telling what they're doing, what their angle is.
Yeah, look, I completely agree, and I think it is. And I think it is that transparency. I mean, we are, and as you know, with the exception of what yeast we use.
By the way, everyone, if you'd like to just post a question, what's the yeast profile that Ed uses? He'll gladly answer it.
Ed won't tell you. You know, we're transparent with everything we use. I mean, we show people the botanicals we put in. We show people the coffee. We show people the cacao. We can show you the grain if you really want to. You know, and where it's from and who actually grows it and all that stuff. And I think what's interesting and unique for us, I guess, because obviously coming from corporate, is that we know or have met all of our suppliers at one stage or another. And that's a really interesting kind of relationship to have. I mean, you know, we get our bottles screen printed down in South Australia. You know, we've been down there. We've actually had a chat to them. We've met the guy who owns it. We've met the people who do it. We've, you know, had a drink with the guy who actually does the screen printing machine. I don't know what you call it, thing that puts it on. You know, and that's really cool because when they're doing our bottles, you know, you can tell there's a lot of care taken. And they've met us, they know us, they've drunk our product, you know, they've been involved with us. And that is a really good way, I think, to build a business, to ensure that you have, you know, a great consistency in a product, because everyone's rooting for you because they know you and they want you to. And, you know, the one thing we don't do is we don't ask our suppliers for discounts. We don't go out and try and push their price down, because we understand that they have the same overheads we do. They have the same concerns we do. And we want the best product that they can give us, not the best product they can give us at the time for a price.
Yeah.
We want it to be the best they can do. And that's what they do for us. And I think they really appreciate the ethics in it, and they understand that, and it follows through to the product. I mean, we get, I think the vodka is a classic example of, you know, we get people coming into the distillery, you know, to try whiskey, and they leave with a bottle of vodka as well, even though their opening statement is, "I don't drink vodka."
Yeah.
And it's, you know, we get comments like, "Oh, it's like vodka but doesn't burn." It's like, yeah, I don't really think vodka is meant to burn, but it comes through because of what the base product is it's coming from. I think if I made it from something else, if I made it from less, in terms of the product, if we made it from a cheaper product, then it wouldn't be as good. I mean, I'm not a magician, I'm a distiller. I can't make something that's not a great product to begin with, a great product at the end. What I can do is I can take a great product, you know, that really is something wonderful that's been made in the food bowl of Australia, and transform that into a great liquid that people can enjoy, whether that be vodka or whiskey. And that's the goal, you know, is to create that level of enjoyment and that level of sophistication.
Yeah. One of the things which I really love about Australian craft spirits, the movement, because it is a movement really, is a lot of us are doing different things. A lot of us are going our own road and trying different things. And so there's a uniqueness. There's not a uniformity. It's not like you go to, for example, Backwoods in Victoria, and you'll have a whiskey, and then you'll taste the Craftworks whiskey, or you taste an OCD whiskey. They're all different. Your vodka totally different to the boys down the road, Mobius Distillery. They're on a different path than you. Gin, where do you start with gin? I mean, God, there's so many different styles of gin out there, and it's exciting. It's creative, and I think the people that, you know, buy the products hook into the energy, excitement, passion, and experimentation and creativity aspect of it. You know, we put a following that way for sure. I'm convinced of it. And things like what we're doing now, I think is good for the industry as a whole. You know, we'll all get our stories out there. Now, before we go any further, I see Ali is there. Ali's a good supporter of us. There he is. So, Ellie, what's in your drink, mate? What are you drinking? What a stroke. Oh, crap, it's one of mine. He didn't read the rules.
You're drinking craft. What? What are you drinking?
I'm drinking Batman.
Oh,
Oh, Batman. There you go. Very limited.
Ellie,
And mixing
mate.
it up with
hey.
OCD.
Good.
Mate, you got a ton of Australian whiskies out there. Go and get something which is not Craftworks and not OCD.
I'll leave it alone. He's drinking good stuff. It's all good.
I'm gonna pull out two of my favorites.
Go for it,
two
mate.
new Australians that are favorite.
What do
I'll
you
go
got?
them now.
Go for it.
Where is he? I can't see him. It's fine. I've lost him.
I've just left to go grab them.
He's got to go into the 40-foot room. That's his whiskey collection.
Oh, that's a scary room. Yeah. Hey, Mr. Young. Youngie's on. I just noticed.
He's on. He's not saying much, but he's on.
Julie's on. Valero's on. Hey, Valero. Hey, Michael. I see you there. Victor. Cool. Paul. Hey, that's not bad. I thought we'd only have 2 people. We're doing okay.
What do you got, Ellie? Show us.
Where is it?
My favorite distillery for the time being is 7K. As people tasted this, I'm actually a massive fan.
They're down Tasmania, aren't they?
Yeah. They
Wow.
they launched recently.
Sure.
And
Carry on, Ellie. Sorry, mate.
no, you're right. I won't try to pronounce this. I think it's Anthropocene.
Oh, that one. Yes.
Yeah.
That's Peter Gotter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Top whiskey, I believe.
Yeah. But both of those have been sort of crowd favorites for the new releases that have sort of come to the market.
Awesome, mate.
Mm.
And what about our friends down at Five Nines Gin, who they've released their first whiskey? You tried theirs?
Yes, I've tried theirs. They're quite nice.
Awesome. That's good. That's good. Okay. All right. So let's change the conversation a bit. Let's go the direction of, so Ed, you make white spirits and you make brown spirits. So whiskey, obviously, you're very restricted by what you've put down, years ago. But white spirits, you're less restricted, and you're quite innovative in what you're doing with your white spirits. So not what you're doing now, but what do you think you could be doing in the future? What can you talk about secret project wise?
Nothing.
Well, that was a short conversation. That's the end.
So we've already got it's not. We've already got formal variants that are there.
You're right.
We've done some testing with that have come up really, really well. They taste great, and they all have a home. I mean, a lot of the spirit, the white spirits, the goal is to have a beverage that you can drink straight, on ice if that's your way, with a really basic mixer, but one that can also be used right through to a cocktail that's quite complicated and interesting. And this is one of the things that's working really well with the bars, and one of the reasons they're really liking the vodkas. So we do have some stuff in the works, but it all falls under the same principle of, we're really looking to source Australian ingredients as much as we can, and use those to hero the product without removing or at least utilizing the base grain flavor profile in the vodka. And I think, it's interesting, but we don't get a lot of flavor. I mean, we don't necessarily release everything, but we don't get a lot of flavor profiles that don't work using that methodology. So I mean, one would think, you'd come up with something. I mean, even when we did the teas, we did 6 variants, and I thought, one maybe would come through. All 6 actually came through really well, and we decided on the 2 that we went for. One is because I was obsessed with an old cocktail called the Lemon Drop, which tastes like the old Lemon Drop boiled lolly, hence Lemon came to life. And 23 was very gin-esque. It crosses over a path, and gin lovers come and drink it, and they're kind of quite confused because it's not a gin, it's a vodka. But it's interesting into the market. And for me, I mean, I'm not a big gin fan. I don't drink a lot of gin, but I do like 23. It's sort of a little bit more mild in terms of it. It's not quite that medicinal flavour profile that people seem to like, but it works well. So it's something I can get behind. which is really good. Importantly, you know, we're only going to release things and products that we really like, which is why, you know, at the moment we only have whiskey and vodka. You know, I mean, back in the 90s, I was a cocktail bartender. You know, loved mixing it up like Tom Cruise. We all thought we were, but it was vodkas that I was interested in. And back then, I actually didn't like whiskey. I had whiskey for the first time when I was 18, and it was horrible. It was a horrendous experience. And it wasn't until I was 28 that I drank it again, because every time someone said to me, "Do you want it?" all I did was remember this horrible stuff that they gave me when I was 18. I was like, well,
What was it?
yeah, well, I'm not going to say, I'm not going to publicly shame anyone, but it was cheap Scottish rubbish that was very smoky and peaty. So you can guess where it sits. It wasn't. I really didn't like it at all. One of the things we used to do at the end when we closed the club was we would have a Guinness, a cigar, and a whiskey. And first time I did it, they gave me the whiskey and I drank it. Said, "Oh, this is yuck. No, thank you." But then, yeah, when I was old, I was 28, started drinking whiskey again, and obviously the flavour profile started to change. It wasn't all about this overly, and it sounds a bit thing, but it wasn't this overly masculine, heavily peaty, smoky flavour profiles. These other flavour profiles were coming in, which were becoming quite interesting, and I sort of started to get into it. And then, you know, with work, I was lucky enough to work at a place that we had access to everything. And we were able to drink not only our own products, but the competitors' products. And I sort of got quite into it, and clearly, obviously, got too excited about whiskey one day, hence the distillery. But yeah, in terms of other stuff coming out, I mean, I don't want to carry out of the bag just because
No, of course.
it's all that. But really, it's the key thing is working on them, is making sure that we are using the Australian products, and we're really going down that angle. You know, putting hand on heart, saying this is what's in it. You know, we call everything out for that part. So I think that's an important part of the Australian scene is doing that. And what I find is that the bartenders and that really like it and appreciate it. You know, they do that. And the other part too is when I create a product and we release it, we need it to be consistent. You know, we're not, you know, in the craft industry where we're not set up with labs. You know, we're not measuring stuff to the same way that they are in the larger businesses. So you're really relying on this consistency of this raw product to help you create consistency of the final product. I mean, yes, you taste it along the way and you check it and you do these things, and it's great. But, you know, even I know, you know, to a day, I mean, if I've got hay fever, it affects my palate. You know, if you've eaten chilies the night before, it affects your palate. So being able to rely on suppliers that are giving us these really consistent products means that we know the formula that comes through is going to deliver a really consistent outcome. And so far, what we found is that it does, and it does it really well.
Nice.
So yeah. So no, I'm not going to share one, Crafty. No.
No. What was your first recollection of an Australian spirit that you tasted?
An Australian spirit that I tasted?
Yeah. What can you think of?
God.
Oh, I've slowed them down, people. I've slowed them down.
To be honest, when it was actually highlighted that it was an Australian, well, illegal or illegal?
No, let's stick with legal.
Let's go with legal.
We're getting monitored here, so let's just illegal.
No, look,
we all have a relationship with the APO. We all like to keep that relationship sound, please.
Oh, it wasn't me making it. I didn't make that stuff. No, yeah, look, I mean, probably when we started doing whiskey tastings, and we were doing competitive sets, and that's really out that these were Australian. I mean, in terms of white spirits and gins and things, I mean that started after it, so they weren't as out there then. So really, it was while doing a whiskey competitive set tasting, and it was whiskies from from Tasmania, sorry, that we were tasting, and we were going through. And that was sort of probably the first time it was a standout moment to say that yes, this is actually an Australian-made spirit. Yep. For me, it wasn't so much with the whiskey about being necessarily Australian. in terms of opening up and getting into it. It was more just that there started to be these other profiles in terms of the flavors that were there that I think be just more friendly to get into and taste. And I know when I get certain things, you know, because I'm not really into smoky peaty. There are always people there trying to convince me that smoky peaty is the way to go. I don't know why. But yeah, I do like it. And I think then, you know, with the Australian and us having looser rules or more appropriate rules, I should say, around the production of whiskey and being able to use different barrels to finish, you know, whether it's port, sherry, you know, PX, Pinot, bourbon, whatever, it then allows that to sort of grow. And I think there's becoming, you know, a more predominant feel in terms of what Australian spirit is and what Australian whiskey is. And I think that's a great thing. You know, you don't have to be an expert to enjoy Australian whiskey. You don't have to be an expert to start to tell the differences in Australian whiskey. You know, we're not sitting our Wesset, you know, wine course and trying to tell if something's from a certain region of France. You know, it's really just about being able to describe those flavors. And I think because there are such robust variances in those flavors, you know, everyone get on board with starting to talk about it. And I mean, you know, hand up, and I'm an absolute whiskey tosser. I can't help it. I love it. But, you know, it's fun. You know, I've got friends now who drink whiskey very differently because of drinking whiskey with me and talking about it. And then they start to enjoy it. And then they go to a bar like Baxter's, and rather than just pointing at something because it's in a pretty bottle, you know, they'll say to the bartender, I want something that is, and then they sort of give this description of what they're looking for because they know they enjoy that. And then they sort of have this 5-minute banter with the bartender about the whiskey that they chuff off and find. And I mean, that place is amazing. They do seem to come back magically with exactly what you described. I don't quite know how they remember them all. But I think that's really cool, you know, and it makes it far more accessible for people because you do have these variances that are able to be described, and it's fun. Like, it's fun to do.
Look, I agree with you. I think you said accessibility, and I think that's a big part of what we do and how we operate. We're accessible, and there is a lot of variation out there on the Australian landscape, and it's great to just get out there and explore and try different flavor profiles and yeah, you don't have to be an expert at whiskey to enjoy Australian whiskey. Just have fun with it. It's, you know, you find most Australian distillers that I know, they're approachable people. They'll tell the story about what they're doing, and that just reinforces that connection and that craft. And I think we're really in an exciting time. I really do.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Todd, we got any questions, mate, or have we lost our complete audience?
I know the audience is pretty stable, but no questions.
No questions.
They're enjoying what you're saying.
I see Anthony's just moved to the couch or something. So
just shooting
what's
the
in your
shit
glass,
is
mate?
good.
What are you drinking? What are you drinking? Is it Australian? It's got to be Australian if you're here. Oh, come on, show us your glass. He's shy. But hopefully everyone who's on tonight is drinking an Australian whiskey. Shandy, what are you drinking, mate? What is it? I can't see that. It's black bottle. It's what was it? I don't know. I've lost him. Where is he? He ran away with his bottle, dude.
He's gotten shy and left.
Isn't it tempting?
Shandy,
The Glenlivet Cipher.
oh, get that. Oh, actually. Okay. We might make an exception.
Yeah.
That is
Sounds good.
intriguing, I must say. And just on that point, we bang on about Australian spirits and Australian whiskies and all that. We are not in any shape or form anti what's going on in Scotland, America, Japan, Taiwan, India, whatever. There is some exciting product. Ireland. There's some exciting products all over the place.
yes.
And one I'm particularly excited about is Waterford. You talk about terroir, you talk about provenance. These guys are growing barley in specific farms and basically milling and mashing dedicated whiskey tied back to the farm and showing the different expressions. And they're only just released, but oh my God, they're taking the world by storm. And I cannot wait until we can get a bottle of that on our shores and taste it, enjoy it. So yeah, where's Ed? I've lost Ed. So Ed, if you were just starting again, mate, where are you? I've lost you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you were just starting all over again, right from the scratch, right? And you know what you know now, what would you do? What would be the 3 key things you would do differently?
I'd skip 7 years of learning. I'd do that 3 times. Look, I don't think you can. I think we talked about this, and so we're coming towards the end. I saw an interview with Dave Grohl, and he was talking about kids on these talent shows, and he's watched some 10-year-old get up and perform something perfectly, plays a guitar, piano, drums all at the same time, right? They're amazing.
Right.
And he said he doesn't get it. He said, you should, when you learn an instrument, you should suck at playing an instrument, and you should play with your friends, and you should suck, and you should be in a band, and you shouldn't be very good, and then you should get a gig at a bar, and you should play, and eventually one day, after doing this continuously and sucking for quite a long time, you eventually become really good at it. And it really is that apprenticeship of it, that this expectation that you magically come out and can produce something that is amazing straight away is unrealistic. And I don't think there is anything you really can change. I mean, yeah, there might be some things with equipment or whatever that I would change, but my learnings taught me how to make really good product because of my failures. And if you take those away, then you're not going to have that good product, and you're not going to have that understanding. And I think that's important for everyone to remember. I mean, I get phone calls, as you do, from people wanting to become distillers, and they're talking about stuff and they're trying to get past certain bits, but you can't get past those things.
You've got to find your own.
Yeah, you have to suck, and then you can get good at it. And I think that's important to remember. And I think it's important to remember for people who are, buying Australian spirits, is that the person who bought it off spent a lot of time not very good at it, and then suddenly one day figured it out. And that's the passion of it. And that's the difference between, guys like us, and corporates that really are just pushing it to a formula.
Yeah. Look, I agree. My philosophy was, I started, I learnt, I read a lot, did a lot of research on the internet, did a couple of courses, did a Tassie course, did a UK correspondence course, then did the IBD certificate in distilling. So I built the fundamental knowledge base. At the same time, I surrounded myself with really good people in the industry who are great friends of mine and mentors. To this day, I pick up the phone, talk to them all the time. And a lot of them said, mate, you got to find your own way. We'll help you, or we can. We'll share our mistakes and we'll share our learnings, but you do have to find your own way. And you do. It's so important. You make mistakes. I get called turkey brain by a certain distiller mate of mine because some of the things I come up with. What annoys me.
That's such a good name, by the way.
Turkey brain. I get called turkey brain. Yeah. No, my name's Crafty. Don't call me turkey brain, mate.
No.
So what really annoys me is I get phone calls now, and you probably get them too, Ed. You get people that ring you up and go, hi, I'm a wannabe distiller. I want to come and spend some time with you. I want you to teach me everything you know. Then I'm going to go away and I'm going to make my distillery and happy days. And you go, first of all, who are you? I don't know you from a bar of soap. You haven't tried to form any sort of relationship. You've just jumped from, I think you can help me with learning, I will extract as much information as I can from you, and then I will do my thing. There's no relationship. There's no sharing. And a lot of this industry has been built on relationship building and sharing of information. So I'm starting to see more people coming into the industry that are not like that are just thinking they can just extract information from someone without actually contributing, without actually going the hard yards. So that's just my opinion. Ed, what do you?
So Ed, are you still online?
Looks like we've lost Ed.
Yeah.
Oh, no, he's still there somewhere.
We've just lost his video for some reason.
No, we've lost him entirely. He'd obviously had enough. We hit the hour and a half
Crafty, I
mark.
think you're on mute, Crafty.
Nah, bugger it.
Yeah, Crafty, you're on mute.
I'm on.
There you are. Now you're back. No, we've lost it. And look, this is what we were dealing with at the very beginning before we went live as well.
No, I haven't touched it.
Stop touching it.
I'm not touching it. It went.
Yes, you're touching something.
Okay, you watch what happens. I'll go mute. Anyway.
Okay, so while Ed's away.
Did anyone hear my mute? My rant?
No,
It cut out just then, thankfully.
Shall I start my rant again?
No, please don't.
Okay,
No,
fair enough.
So a question to you while we're waiting for Ed to possibly pop up again.
Go for it.
Okay, and so do you think cuts are important? And if so, what are your cuts?
Oh, that's got to be a Shandy question, is it? Paul Shand?
Yeah.
Fellow distiller. He's trying to extract me for information. No, he's a good mate of mine. Shandy, I cut first cut 75, second cut 60. So I've got a very wide cut. I'm a big believer in extracting those fruity flavors and those heavier flavors at the end. My spirit is quite a robust spirit. It's built on a mash bill, which was originally a stout recipe. So I've got big complexity that way. So for me, a tight cut doesn't work. I'm not about just getting a really, really clean, fruity spirit. I started like that. Whether it was the right call or not, we'll know. But I've been doing it now for, pardon me, about 3 years, and yeah, pretty happy. Shandy, what's your cuts, mate? Anyway, okay. Looks like we lost Ed still.
Yeah, Ed's disappeared, so possibly that might be the night.
Well, just to finish off,
Can you hear me, Crafty?
Yeah, I can hear you, Shandy.
Okay. I started off initially going from 75 to 65.
Yeah, right.
I'm now going from probably minimizing my heads. So I'll start anything between 76, 77.
Yeah.
And as time goes on, going a bit lower. So probably down to about 63, 64.
Yeah, okay. That's a pretty wide cut, mate.
It is.
So I'm learning from your experience and from the quality of your spirit, Crafty. Yeah.
I talked to Bill Lark about this cuts a few years ago, and he said, mate, that's quite a wide cut. And I went, yeah. But he tasted some stuff and gave me the thumbs up, so I felt good. So okay, since we lost Ed, I'll just finish up because I think we're winding up now. And I'll just say something about Project Ian in case people know about Project Ian. So
well, Project Ian now actually whilst Ed's not here, so
he's not here.
Benefit of anything.
All right. So okay. So my first release has a certain name, and it'll be revealed on the 24th of November. And anyway, I did a post about 3 months ago of the proposed label, and I blurred it all out so you couldn't actually work out what it was. So it was a bit of a teaser. So then I get a phone call from Ed, and he goes, so who the fuck's Ian? And I go, what? I go, who the fuck's Ian? And I go, what do you mean? And he said, I've looked at your photo. I've blown it up. I can clearly see you've got Ian written on the bottle. And in my head, when I just started laughing, it was hilarious to me. So I said, oh, mate, I can't tell you. Sorry, I've got to go. I've got to run. So I ran. Then a week later, he rings me up and he goes, who's Ian? Tell me who's Ian. So for the last 3 months, I have been taunting Ed with Ian. So my first release, the bottle name is Project Ian until I release it on the 24th of November. And I've been taking a series of videos of different people who are drinking Project Ian, and maybe Ian, maybe not Ian. So Ian may be a person, may not be a person. So all will be revealed. So it's the Monty Python taunt of Ed for the next next month. So that's the story. So anyway, he missed all that. So we'll wind it up now, guys. All those that chimed in, thank you. I hope you're drinking Australian craft spirits. I hope you're drinking and trying different ones and experimenting. There's some great products out there. This is episode 1. There's going to be quite a few more. I've got about 30 Australian distillers lined up to do this. And beyond that, I've got a lot of other people to talk to and some internationals as well. So I think we've got enough content for 2020, 2021 and beyond, and we'll see how we go with this. This will go up on YouTube. We're going to have a YouTube channel. We'll keep adding to it. We hope to build a bit of a following. The idea is we're telling our stories, we're getting behind the brands, you're meeting the people, and ask the questions. We'll answer the questions what we can. Shandy asked about cuts. I'll freely talk about cuts. Ed won't talk about his yeast profile, so don't worry about that one. So, guys, this is Crafty in the shed. I am distilling, and I got a big brew to clean up tomorrow morning, so I'm signing out.
Just hang on, Crafty. Just stay on. Hang on till the end. Thanks, guys, for a great night.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Thanks, and we'll see you around, eh? Cheers from Crafty.
Yeah. Cheers. See you next time.